Okay. What's up, guys? It's the Burning Numbers podcast here with your host, Josh, and my good friend, Numayr. We're going to be talking about a interesting topic, capitalism, socialism, and communism. I'm going to pass it over to Numayr here, who's going to talk about and kind of explain the definitions of what that means before we start diving into the topic.
So basically, what we have to start with, we have capitalism, and it's called an economic or political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit rather than by the state. So basically, what this means is sectors and industries are controlled by usually a person rather than the actual government. This is not the same as communism, which is actually a theory or system of social organization in which all property is owned by the community and each person contributes and receives according to their ability and needs. So what people, in layman terms, what people know this as is the country's wealth is shared by everyone, and nothing is privately owned. Everything is publicly owned, so it's known to be owned by everyone, but it's government controlled. And then you have socialism, which is a political and economic theory of social organization, which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole.
So how much of a similarity would you say is communism and socialism?
I'd say socialism takes the aspects of capitalism and the fact that you should have trade, but then it also takes the ideas of communism, which is have things to be state-owned. I'd say socialism tends to happen in more like the Western European countries, so like France, Germany, Luxembourg, said Germany already, Belgium, places like that have more state-owned ideas.
Yeah.
So after me using these definitions, what do you think Britain is at currently?
Well, we're mostly capitalist society. I think the communist societies are more of like the China, the Cuba, Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of they're like factory workers, all defined and governed by the government itself. So everything from where they should build their factories to how much each employee should be paid is determined by the government. So you kind of get in an idea of who's in control and the power. I personally think there's going to be a lot of issues with just one government body controlling kind of everything, because they already control your political and your relationships through other countries, trade and so forth. But then you also have no control to other people in a sense. But then the idea of socialism itself is about giving control to the people. But really, the only people in control of anything really is the people who are in the power, which is the government. In a capitalist society, the people have control of your wages, apart from the minimum wage, but that's your boss, right?
Mm-hmm. So if you were living in like a socialist society, so one thing about socialism, communism, is that wealth is shared between everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the main flaws that people say behind communism is the fact that you don't have reason to do anything. You don't have reason to progress forward. What do you think about that one?
I'm kind of more for capitalism. So in a sense, I kind of agree. However, I do have conflicts and ideas. So I think that it's better in a capitalist society that more people, you're almost rewarded for effort and talent, right? If you don't put effort and talent in, you're not going to really succeed in a capitalist society. If you want to start your own business, which a socialist society doesn't really allow that for, then in a capitalist society, it's survival of the fittest. The better people then go out on top. That potentially allows for people who have hunger to be more innovative. They're going to be more willing to go the extra mile because they want to change their family tree, for example. Look at lots of people who are the leading of big companies, Microsoft, Apple. Some of these people across the board, not just those, they come from poor-ish middle-class families. And one of their desires is to go and completely change how their family is financially, which led them to be innovative, which led them to then go on and create business, create jobs for people. I think that's better. In
But then it
that
gets
sense.
to the point, right? You say, oh, it's better, all of this kind of stuff, right? But don't you think if you have a society that you can, it gets to a point where people start monopolizing power and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you, with that, then it becomes like you can start exploiting customers, things like that.
Do you have any examples of so most of Western civilization is capitalist? Would you agree with that?
Mhm. Yes.
Okay, so can you give me examples of where we have a monopoly that actually has full control and starts exploiting customers?
Let's think of it in the way that if we have healthcare,
Yeah.
not specifically here because healthcare is free here, but if you have somewhere which is where if there isn't free healthcare, right?
Yeah.
And it gets to the point where um if in a lot of areas, like let's say in America, let's say America for this
Mm-hmm.
topic, you have, we're not talking about the bigger states, we're talking about the flyover states that aren't as developed as the other states in America, where you have, like, let's say minimal facilities. So if you have a hospital in one of these states, that becomes the only hospital in the state or in the city. And it gets to a point where that in itself is a monopoly of that city. And then they can choose the price point there. And then it gets to a point in these places where you can start seeing them like completely inflate their prices just because they can.
Yeah, I agree with the idea. However, let's say, for example, you do have that hospital in one of these states, and then you're inflating your prices. Well, I'm going to come along and see that there's an opportunity. There's a huge demand for healthcare in these underdeveloped places, and there's a huge need for someone to come in and take healthcare to a smaller price. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to build my own hospital or get someone else to build it, and then provide healthcare to people for a cheaper price. And then as soon as that happens, that means that you have to drop your price because now you have no customers, and then you have a competition. So I agree with the idea. I think where you're kind of leaning towards is if you look at lots of companies based on their profit is dependent on their supplies, and then the cost of their supplies. So if you have, I don't think the issue is in your example, the hospital. I think the issue would then be more of where they're getting their pharmaceuticals from and those companies, because the hospital, someone else can just come in and then buy the supplies. But then the supplies, how are they manufacturing those? So I think it goes down to the manufacturers. Are they having competition? Are they having the same situation?
Yeah, sure. And
What do
then
you
I think
go on?
another problem a lot of people have with capitalism as a whole is that because it's such a, would you agree that it's a cutthroat kind of thing, right? It's a cutthroat kind of society where you have to really be the strong to thrive.
Well, be the strongest to thrive, and that's okay. What would you define as strong, and then what would you define
Oh,
as thriving?
so I'd say thriving in a capitalist society is money. It's money driven.
Yeah.
Would you agree? And then being the strongest is having the capacity to be able to make that money and being able to put the effort into get the money,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
right?
But then when you're in a capitalist, or just in general, you have companies like McDonald's. They supply other people who they supply other people with a job that you don't need much skills to develop. You can go work in McDonald's. You can learn in 8 hours straight how to do a job. You are now getting paid. You are now getting money. You can live. So I don't, even in the capitalist society, like we have more so capitalist here or America, it still allows for the majority of the people to work. It's whether you decide, shall I go to work? Obviously, there's other hindrances of, do you have medical conditions that stop you from working? But then the economy is so diverse in the potential jobs you can have. There's people just talking on here. making money, right? So I don't think there's a situation where there's somebody who doesn't have the drive to actually go out and work, doesn't have the potential to make money.
No, but then you have to go to the idea that capitalism does generally result in quite a bit of wealth inequality, right? So then it hits to the point where these people, like you said, McDonald's, these people in McDonald's can choose a wage, any wage, and people will definitely go for it just because capitalism creates this thing where you probably heard it: the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, right?
Yeah.
So then it gets to that endless cycle where they can legit choose, like if they wanted to, if we had no minimum wage cap in the UK and they chose legit £3 an hour, I can guarantee you that just due to the nature of how capitalism works and the fact that there is such a wealth inequality that people will go for it.
Yeah, I think most societies, and like these are all like ideologies, right? And everything in society is about trying to achieve an ideology. I think having a mix of kind of socialism, capitalism, socialism, communism is just kind of a form of like Marxism, right? Depends on which leaders leading the country, but it's wonderful that we have the NHS here. You get free education in most of the Nordic countries. Is that how you pronounce it? Nordic? Nordic?
I think it's not. Is it Nordic?
Nordic, that's the one. I think so. Yeah.
Nordic.
Yeah. So most of those countries, or at least some of them, you get free education, and the standard of living is really high. Minimum wage is high. The happiness of the country is usually on the ratings is very high as well. So I think a mixture of all of it is good, but they do have a capitalist economy. So I completely agree. You shouldn't have the lowest of the low. And onto the idea that you said about having minimum wage, and people can do that, and people say, "Oh, you can't. The rich get rich and the poor get poor." As you know, my business is about money and teaching people financial education and the personal finances and building that. And I get a lot of the time that people say to me that, Josh, but wages are stagnant. You know, I've been on the same wage. How can I get ahead? Or how can I use a part of my income and put that towards investing? But wages are not stagnant. If you think about it, people are stagnant, right? You can choose to stay in the one job for 5 years, or you can choose to stay in one job for 2 years, and then you think, oh, I want to improve my quality of life, or put more money into investing. And so you decide to increase how valuable you are. I'm actually writing a book right now, and this is one of the parts where I talk about increasing your income, and you can decide to go and learn and become more valuable. The only reason why you get paid how much you do is because you create value, a certain amount of value, to a certain number of people. I kind of realized this when I worked in McDonald's, kind of making burgers, but each burger is sold for £5. But how is McDonald's itself making millions, right? That's because they're providing value. That value is food. They're providing value to millions of people. So if you want to increase your income, you need to take the initiative to increase your value to either one person, the biggest hedge fund manager kind of all time. What's his name? Not Ryan, Roy Dalio, I think. Yeah, he had a hedge fund where he controlled more than £40 billion. You needed to be at least £1 million invested into him for you to actually join this hedge fund, right? So he's creating, and he got roughly on average over the years 40% profit for these investors. So he's creating 40% profit like no one else really gets. Huge value for a few amounts of people. But McDonald's is providing a small amount of value for millions of people. Both of them are earning lots of money, but they're both providing value, more value than other people are able to provide.
No, but then let's say, how would you say you can showcase your value? Because you're talking about like, oh, you need to value yourself, right? But obviously when you value yourself, you have to be able to show that value to other people.
Of course, but it's about providing value, isn't it? So if you're providing value to your job, then your boss is going to see that. It's going to they're just going to see it, right? If you're not providing value, they're not going to see it. If you are providing value, then I don't see how you can provide value and people not be able to see it, because you're providing value to somebody. And then it's like the idea of business. If you do bad things to people in business, they're going to talk about it as other people and be like, "Oh, I didn't like that place." Or if you go to Pizza Hut and then you get a bad experience by customer service, you're going to be like, "I ain't going there again." But if you go to Pizza Hut and you get a good experience, you're just going to pass that information along. You're going to be like, "Oh yeah, I went to Pizza Hut and they gave me a good experience. I had this issue, but they resolved it very quickly." And you're going to go tell your friend, you're going to post on social media, blah, blah, blah. So they're providing value to you. And because you're a person, you then talk about that, because we're social human beings, right? I don't see how you can provide value, then not be kind of rewarded for it. And if you're not being rewarded, then you can change jobs and find somebody who is going to reward you for it.
Let's say, because we are living in a weird society right now, where, let's say, doing that isn't as easy. For example, like unemployment rates at an all-time high. Right?
Yeah.
So you're saying, so people are getting put into the position which is like, oh, I need this job. And it's not the reason like, oh, it's not the reason like, oh, it's going to help me thrive. It's going to help me support myself.
Are you saying in terms of society now because of COVID-19?
Yes. What would you say to people like that?
Okay, my view on COVID-19, we had a lot of people are working from home. So a lot of people are still employed. A lot of people are still able to go to the jobs, whether it's like a railway, NHS, anything like tech related is on a computer and you can do that from home. They have meetings here on Zoom. So a lot of people are still employed. Let's not neglect that fact. But those of us who do become unemployed, companies are not doing that, or they become on furlough. So a lot of people got made on furlough, especially from like the hospitality industry. I myself also did. So from March till June, you got paid, or you're unemployed and you didn't get paid. But the economy's contracted and there's less jobs, right? So you have a choice of what you can do during this period of time. And a lot of people choose to go and watch Netflix. A lot of people choose to sit there and play games, or just talk on the phone, or just flick through social media throughout the day. And the way you can create value or add more things to your CV is you can go and be productive. You can try and find something to do. You can put effort in. I personally started my own business during the first couple of months of lockdown, and my business is about providing value on the personal finance sense to other people. And there's a whole field of learning. You can put on your CV what books you read, and that shows your interest. That shows your intellectual capability. That shows that you're not just sitting at home watching Netflix. So I agree, it's difficult because the economy is contracted. There's less jobs, but then that's more competitive. And maybe, in the future, this is not always going to be the same. A lot of people think that, no, the world's going to end and we're going to die. We ain't going to die. 2008 recession, not many people died. I'm not saying people not dying due to COVID-19, but in terms of the economy and jobs, there's hope. We're going to result in a good situation. But you can use your time wiser than a lot of people are using your time, and adding value to other people or increasing your ability to add value is a lot better. So for example, a lot of people, sorry, I know you're going to talk there. A lot of people are, you can spend that 3 months and you can do a university course, right?
Okay, yeah.
You can do a university course online. Yeah, you can gain the first year of a degree, or go learn how to start coding, for example. You can gain these skills, and you have time. So I think it's all about productivity, how you decide to use your time.
Okay, so then that's a very good idea. That's a very good point, because you do see people, especially right now, is if I flick through my Instagram, I'll see, oh, what show should I watch today? What song should I listen to at this time of year?
Yeah.
But you don't really see anyone going, oh, what courses should I do right now? how should I progress myself? How should I do this? How should I do that?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
more like, oh, what show is really good at the moment? What anime can I watch right now?
yeah.
What game is hot right now? I agree. It's just, that's a good, really good point. And then, but then you hit to the idea, which is, why have we as a society been like so conditioned to go to those rather than go into? Because surely this is also a, let's say, a byproduct of us our growing up, right?
Yeah.
Why are we why do you think we're gravitating towards generally going to entertainment rather than going to bettering ourselves?
Um, uh, I think that's lots of different views or reasons why. Depends on the person. I think most people fall into a category. Um, we have a society that feeds off of our need to use that. So there's a lovely show on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. Have you seen that?
No.
No. Okay. So Social Dilemma, it talks about how the company's social media pages like Facebook is designed to get you addicted to it, right? And how Facebook makes money is they sell, we are the product. Our time is the product. So they sell our information and viewing time. That's going to get a lot of actually heat. They don't sell our information. They have our information in which sort of companies can advertise to the correct people. Okay, so they sell the fact that they have the ability to um, choose who to advertise to, and then they sell our time to the companies, and they do that the same way like YouTube will put advertisements on a video, right? That's our time that they're selling, and the more people watch the YouTube video, the more money the YouTuber gets, because the more people are viewing the advertisement, and therefore the time in which us people are viewing it is the product. So companies pay YouTube, who pays the YouTuber? Companies pay YouTube for time on the platform. So I think society, advertisement, that sort of thing, forces, and they're so clever in how they, positionings, colors, how they make everything look on a platform like Facebook, Google, YouTube, whatever, that makes us addicted. But then we also have that choice to not do that. I think that partly comes under your, they say the
You,
closest people around you are the five people, and you are a product of the five people around you, right? So, for example, me, um, my best friend Basir, he works all day, every day. He has a child and wife, and then he spends time with his family. And he's very productive in his time. He's not really playing games. He's not really doing that thing. But the people around him, I always have conversations similar to how we're doing. We have productive conversations about how we're going to better our lives, right? We're not really bothered about what happened on Facebook. We're not really bothered what the results of the football was. But the fact that he is like that and the fact that I'm like that kind of bounces off of each other. And
mhm.
so if I now go and just find a random person on the street that's nothing like me, who doesn't have the same values of wanting to better prove their life, or um, it doesn't matter about their values, but they're not spending time on doing that, then they're going to kind of rub off on me, aren't they? In a sense.
I was gonna say, to the point I made before, do you think there's a reason, like, I said people like tend to go towards entertainment. Do you think that's the comfort of people having such like social policies put on, right? Like if these people currently are on furlough, right? So they just see the income coming in, and they don't have to do anything, it's still coming in. Do you think that is an incentive for them to like be like, oh, I don't need to I don't need to try right now because I'm just getting income coming in?
I agree. Also, like, depends
Because
on
I
the
think
company you're
people are
working
very
for, right?
like, yes, because like people, like, you understand, people are just literally just sitting at home, and then they're like, oh, they're getting however many pounds a week, a month coming into their bank account. What they're doing is sitting down and just doing nothing. Do you think that provides that that in my opinion gives people the complete idea that they can just chill out?
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas if you had especially in this time, in this time it makes sense, but in general, like these social policies allow people to just be like, oh, I don't need to do something and I still have money coming in.
I agree, and everybody has a choice in what they do with their time. Um, I think it also depends on the company, how it makes them feel. Some companies are so ready to go bust that it creates fear. Other companies, regardless of how their financial state is, their ability to make their employees feel safe means that they just think, okay, I don't need to look for a new job. I don't need to be productive because I'm able to just go back to my job after this. So they kind of viewing this as a holiday, a very long holiday. But
A bit too long of a holiday.
it's going to be a long holiday, yeah. But it also kind of goes back to the conversation we had the other day, instant gratification. So if you it's if you want to wake up tomorrow morning early and be productive, you have that choice, but that's in the future, right? What you could do now is you can go lay in bed and watch Netflix till 2 a.m. in the morning, and you're instantly getting gratified by watching that. It's much nicer, and we gain instant dopamine rush because of the instant gratification we're getting. So for us, it's easy to plan in the future as human beings, and therefore the fact that we're on furlough or we now have the opportunity to go watch Netflix, or Netflix is getting a lot of hate in this video, but
Netflix, don't sue us, please.
yeah, we can watch Netflix. We're almost given the rights to watch Netflix, and I think I saw it on the news this morning, or at least a notification on my phone saying that the government's kind of taken an idea that they can make teenagers have free 4G. They don't have to pay for 4G, and making Netflix subscriptions free for teenagers to encourage them to stay at home. But okay, why don't you? Surely there's other alternatives that are better for the person. Maybe you can make education free, or give companies subsidies so they can give free courses to teenagers. There's other options I think is available.
I think I think the reasoning behind that one is definitely because if you go for the idea that, oh, we're gonna help better these teenagers, like, it's obviously, me and you will both agree that is much better of an idea to pass forward, right?
Yeah.
But then teenagers are gonna be like, why would I do this? You're just putting me through more work. That is the mindset that a lot of teenagers have.
Of course, yeah. But it depends on how you sell it. You can sell anything to anybody if you put it in the right way. If the government now says, in fact, we're not going to make Netflix subscriptions free, we're going to choose to make coding courses free to learn Python, then everybody's going to be like, this is rubbish. I'm just going to go watch Netflix, even if I have to pay £7-8 a month. They don't care. But if they're paying £7-8 a month and they don't have the idea that they could have got Netflix free, and now they're having the opportunity to have something free, and free items inherently have so much more value to them anyway, because loads of different behavioral economics and psychological economics there. But I think a lot of people are actually they could jump onto that. It doesn't have to be a course they don't like. If you make loads of different courses, something that somebody's interested in, surely, I mean, most people have something that they want to learn, but they just don't want to pay £200, £300 for a course, right?
That is true, but it's like, so when you say you put loads of kinds of courses out, right? I think, especially right now, most of the courses that we can learn would have to be very tech based.
Mm-hmm.
And I think then you hit to the point where it's like, what about if you don't have the accessibility to this technology? What are you going to do then?
Yeah, okay. Alternatives of that. And this is all back to the topic of capitalism, socialism. This is kind of like a socialism policies that we're kind of talking
now we're
about,
going
right?
to hit into a socialism policy, which is, would you provide, is it feasible to provide people that don't have the technological capabilities to actually, like, would you provide them with the courses, and then would you provide them with the tech as well?
Okay, so we provide tech courses online to the whole community of teenagers. And bear in mind, most
Yes.
teenagers have the ability to use that.
Yeah.
And then we also want to keep other people home, high risk categories who are less tech savvy or have the ability to use it, and so or less care. So actually, we make a partnership and subsidize the 50% off of books on Amazon, Kindle books, right? Only educational. And so, you have these, it doesn't need to be just tech. It doesn't need to be, you could do, I'm trying to think of like artwork or
No,
musicians
but
and,
you said educational. I could hit to the point where you could argue that any book is educational, because if you think about, if it's a novel, right? If you have an aspiring author that wants to write a novel, this person wants to take inspiration from these other novels, surely that is thought of as educational, because they are using these novels to learn.
Okay.
And then,
Do you have novels in your in your masters in science?
no, because I don't need them. I have
Okay. Do you have
textbooks.
novels in any GCSE apart from English literature or language? Any novels in
Uh,
those?
only in my English.
Okay. So if you want to that creates some issues around people who are actually interested in English, but if you can provide almost like what you're selling at school, you're providing more of that. If you're a musician, you love playing the guitar, the government can subsidize some sort of educational basis around the guitar. That's going to keep them at home. The whole point of this is to keep people at home without
Yeah,
making them sit in bed watch Netflix, right? I think there's a
that's
lot
where
more
Netflix
that
are going for our throats today.
that should go to Amazon Prime, Amazon Prime Video. Yes, the people are not staying at home watching Prime Video. Um, you can do that. You can do that. You can subsidize that. You can subsidize even writing courses. CV courses, CV writing, and loads of things. And if you do that all based on the idea that people are going to have the ability to create more value, so when the economy now expands again after the coronavirus, then they're going to have everybody's going to be more competitive, but employers are going to have a better selection of people.
Employers, yeah, I agree. Employers would definitely have better selection of people with learning skills. An idea that's hit my head of this social policy, which would be like, instead of like just going like, oh, here's a wide range of things, what about this is a mad idea that just popped in my head. What about if like they were able to like incorporate the schools in, right? And they could be like, students were allowed to apply for things they want to learn, right? So if they gave, they'd be like, oh, I want to learn this with the basis of this, and then like then you could really like allocate the resources into being like, oh, okay, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this, let's do that, because students want this and that.
Yeah.
Do you think schools should be more involved in the idea of keeping kids at school and giving them resources, or do you think that is a government-wide policy thing that shouldn't be given? Because in my head, I feel as if this responsibility should fall into especially the schools, especially because that's where a teenager spends most of their life.
So you're saying should children or teenagers have the ability to choose what they learn?
Extra things that they want to learn, yes.
Like what? Because I think the curriculum itself, I agree that there's lots of things on the curriculum that are not there that are actually very important, like personal finance. A lot of no, there's loads of ideas why, but personal finance is not really taught in that. You don't learn how to invest, you don't learn how to budget, you don't learn the understanding of assets and liabilities, and you don't learn these things. So it's kind of left to our parents, who also don't have the education because the schools don't provide it. And it's a knock-on effect, which is another reason why the rich get rich and the poor get poor, or stay poor. But I think the education system kind of has a lot. You can learn music, you can learn sociology, you can learn all sorts of stuff. My little brother actually started a esports gaming course in college. I don't think that's very intellectual in that academic sense, but there's a lot of options out there.
But I think, do you think, because now we're hitting on school policies, right?
Yeah.
And then so let's talk about like personally, because I got from the UK. So we're gonna hit with the idea of an English school system where you're only allowed to choose what you want to learn from age 14. So you're 14 to 16 education, right? Do you think that is too, in my opinion, I think that is too late of a time to choose, because then I remember when I was in year 7, year 8, year 9, like I'm going to these lessons for like music, art, drama, where essentially I was just wasting my time. Like what am I doing here? Whereas like I'm a student who likes to do maths, who likes to do physics, and I knew that from an early age. And I feel like a lot of students from an early age do know what they want to go, do know what they like, what they have a passion for. They learn it earlier on in their lives. Do you think it's too? In my opinion, I think it's too late of an age for you to start choosing. And even then, you don't even choose much. You're only allowed to choose like 3 or 4 things, depending on the school you go to.
Yeah.
And it's like, for me, I'm a physics, I'm a maths person. And then I hit to the point where it's like, why am I learning literature?
Yeah.
Like I understand language because you have your basic needs, which is learning how to communicate, learning how to read, write, communication, things which are very important. But then you go to the idea of like, why was I learning literature? Why is that essential to me?
Mm-hmm.
Or it's
how do you know that you liked physics?
Huh?
How do you know that you liked physics?
Because when I studied, I didn't see it as a chore.
Okay, so you had to do a whole bunch of things, and some of it you thought was not a chore, and that's what you liked, and that's what you want to specialize in. But without having all of these things that are mandatory.
No, but they've given to me mandatory for 7 years of my life. They've been given to me.
From the age of 7, 8, 9 years old,
yeah,
you don't really dive into the interesting parts of really any single subject, right? So, for example, your ability to create music or understand music is probably fairly low. I mean, you enjoy music and maybe you may do a drum beat, but you can't really create anything or do anything. However, if you was mandatory had to learn that sort of thing, then there's a high possibility you actually might enjoy it. The problem is the human ability to actually learn everything in depth is fairly small, right? So we have to specialize into something. And I think that mandatory system of a broad range of subjects is good. And maybe actually that we're allowing children in their GCSEs to specialize too soon.
I think because then it gets to the point where we're having a jack of all trades rather than a master of none.
Yeah.
And that's where you get the population becoming awfully average.
Okay, but that's on the assumption that you adhere to the norm of, okay, you go through your GCSEs, then you go to high school, and then you go to university, and then you get a job. Right? That's the norm, which isn't a good idea, by the way, because then you got all student loans and all sorts of stuff that messes up the economy and messes up the natural human being. But if you then changed it, so you do your GCSEs and then you do high school, and while you're doing high school, instead of like 9 to 4 at high school, you're doing 9 to 12 or whatever, and then they have to go to work, and then they're building up skills at work, which is very, very valuable, and then while they go to university, they're working, and so that kind of means that because you're learning less in a shorter period of time, it means you need to learn for a longer period of time in your life, right? So now everybody goes to university and they finish university, normal degree, instead of at age 21, the normal age is now at 24. So 3 years later, right? But they're working kind of throughout, paying for everything themselves, understanding and gaining work skills, understanding work, commitment, self-responsibility, all sorts of benefits of that. They can then specialize later in life when their brain is developed, when their physical body is developed, when they have a greater understanding of more subjects, right?
So how what kind of systems would you put in place for something like that to happen? Which is like, because that is something that's really hard to actually achieve. Like that's why companies try to do it. There are companies that provide part-time education, right?
Yeah.
Like I in my degree, there was 3 or 4 students that were already working
Yeah, that's
and
called an
had their
apprenticeship.
degrees,
That's
had their
called an
degree
apprenticeship.
sponsored. Yeah,
Yeah.
but their degree, no, but these people weren't apprentices. They were full-time workers, and then they took time out, and their company paid them to take time out to do physics
Okay. Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
degree. But I feel like companies aren't willing to take that risk because it's a long-term commitment for a select number of people. What systems would you put? What systems do you have in mind that can make that work? Because I would argue that the certain things that you learn in university are like on invaluable. They're like,
yeah. I mean,
you know, yeah,
some subjects and courses have less job prospect ability than
yeah,
others, right?
but
I mean, if you do physics compared to you do English lit, then yeah,
yeah,
go
so
on.
then some things you learn are like invaluable. Like, let's say things that I'm gonna go with things that I've learned just because I can't talk for anyone else. I've learned how to work with big data. I've learned how to um, analyze practical, use my numerical abilities, and all of that in cohesion, right?
Yeah.
And something I probably wouldn't have learned if I hadn't gone to uni. But a lot of so how would companies do see that, right? That's why they ask for like graduates and stuff. But then it hits the point where what like policies would you put in place for companies to like adhere to it? Let's say have an idea for it.
I think we're going into a topic that we're really not clued up on here. My I think generally like having a linking back to kind of the topic of the video, like a socialist view as well as
We've gone on a
capitalism.
huge tangent today.
We've gone on a huge tangent. It's been slightly relevant, which is okay.
Yeah.
Kind of not to ignore your question there, but I think a lot of you're not going to come up with socialists policies that help in a way that the NHS is a socialist policy, right? If it was then to provide free education, everybody is a socialist policy in some sense. I don't think it's as easy to come up with a policy that adheres to a different system while you're inside the system. So if you're in a system that says you have to do something and you're working with other people to do that sort of an end goal, right? Then you're given the power by the system to do that, and because you're given the power, you then give the system power. So there's no like you by yourself. If you're I can bring a story that I had when I'm working in Pizza Express, right? So Pizza Express during COVID-19, you have to do, because you're a restaurant, you have to do certain things. When people come to the door, you have to check if they got a mask, ask them if they have the NHS COVID-19 app and that sort of thing, right? And you have the power to not serve them because that's what the government allows you to do, right? You don't have to serve them unless they do the track and trace. And so that power is given to me to go and enforce these things. If I was just an individual not working for Pizza Express and therefore have the power, then it's meaningless. And so the fact that I'm in the system forces me to do that thing and probably come up with ideas to benefit that system. And I think it only takes somebody, or it helps to be external from a system to actually come up with ideas. So if a capitalist society wants to come up with socialist ideas, kind of what we're trying to do on a tangent of this video, then it helps to. It's probably like Cuba and China is probably going to have better ideas than the United States or the UK of socialist ideas that could help the capitalist society, like come up with NHS.
you said you talked about instant gratification like last time, right?
Yeah.
And how we have instant access to the news and all that kind of stuff. So we have instant access to government policies, systems put in place in different countries. Surely, if a country like you talk about how like Cuba or like China have like socialist policies that a capitalist society can benefit from, right?
Yeah.
Why don't these societies take and implement those ideas inside to their own societies?
Because the people in power to actually put into place the policies and the systems are people from one specific are people who are actually already in the system. We're already in a capitalist society, and so the people who are able to put in the systems are capitalists because they're at the top, right? Look at how much companies have spent money on lobbying to ensure that taxes are not being put onto oil or not being put onto the transportation of certain goods, right? Companies spend billions of pounds every single year on lobbying. Those people are not going to come up with socialist ideas, and those people are the only people that can actually implement the socialist views, right? So yeah, we have understanding and instant access to what Finland is doing, and those countries around the area of giving free education. But the people in control here, I'm not saying they are, but are probably more capitalist in that sense, and therefore they're not really going to actually implement that anyway. So
I think we can confidently say that the government here are more capitalist. They're more right wing. They don't try to hide, you know.
Yeah. I don't want to say anything about anybody else, you know. But
Fair.
yes, I don't think because they're in the system and they're participating in the system, I don't think that kind of is almost like evidence that they're not going to look into, because they benefit from it as well, right? They're not going to look into other forms. Should we cut it there? That's the Burning Numbers podcast, talking about socialism, capitalism, and communism with a huge tangent of trying to come up with our own policies. Thank you guys for watching.
It is what it is.
We're going to come back at some point at the end of this week or early next week, and we'll see you guys again. Thank you.